Hi, it's Sam, Pop Sam Cam. Welcome to the podcast, the Pop Pod. I am very excited for today's episode because we have a guest that I find absolutely fascinating. On this episode, we have McKee. She is the songwriter who has written so many number one records for Katy Perry, but not only Katy Perry, Britney Spears as well. She's written with Kesha. She's written with Kelly Clarkson. The list goes on and on and on. We are going to get to that, but before we do, we'll step into the headlines. If you're not already subscribed to this podcast, you should subscribe. We've had heaps of new subscribers in the last week, and it's very exciting to see this community growing, not only here, but on Discord, where we've got lots of pop fans talking about pop music on the daily. I will put the link for that down in the show notes below. That is the admin all out of the way. Let's get on to the headlines. Let's get straight into it with the news that Lorde has announced her fourth studio album that will be titled Virgin. She has followed up the single What Was That, which she released last week.
MDMA in the back garden, blow up, pupils up. We kissed for hours straight, but baby, what was that?
With the news that this album will be dropping on the 27th of June, which makes June quite a stacked month for albums. We have Haim, Addison Rae, Marina, Turnstile. So many great records coming out, and this will just add to it. The cover image is quite striking. It seems to be an X-ray that shows right through to an IUD as well, which fits with the title of the album. It has been produced by Lorde and Jimmy Stack, but also features work by artists like Dan Nigro and also Dev Hynes. She has said, I am very excited for this record. She accompanied it with an email that basically describes the album as clear like bathwater. This is an exercise in seeing right through herself and kind of sitting in the moment and understanding exactly who she is. She also goes on to say that she was trying to make a document that reflected her femininity, which she described as raw, primal, innocent, elegant, open-hearted, spiritual, and mask. This is going to be one hell of a record, and I am very excited to hear it. Let me know what you think it's going to sound like in the podcast comments, or step into the Discord and we'll talk about the album as well. Next piece of news is that Benny Blanco and Selena Gomez have announced that the deluxe edition of their album, I Said I Love You First, will drop on Friday, and it features some new songs alongside some reimagined versions of the songs that were already on the album. They have revealed that Glorilla will feature on the album, which is very exciting, and there is a music video for a new song, Talk, which is due to drop at some point today.
I need your arms around me. I need to feel your touch.
Hey. This is going to prom. No, this is how you go to prom.
Beyoncé has kicked off her Cowboy Carter stadium tour. She performed in Los Angeles earlier in the week and put together basically a 41-song set list that goes for almost 3 hours. It includes everything from Cowboy Carter, actually. It is a very Cowboy Carter heavy tour, which is what we expected, but there's also lots of stuff from her back catalogue in there. There is plenty of Renaissance. We also get Crazy in Love. We also get interpolations of Why Don't You Love Me, Dangerously in Love. There's so much thrown into the pot. If you imagine what happened on the Renaissance tour, it's a similar thing with the Cowboy Carter tour, except for it's Cowboy Carter this time. Does that make sense at all? Maybe not. It looks incredible. I am going to see the show in a couple of weeks' time, and of course we'll report back on my experience at it. But for now, the tour is off and running. They said it was sold out, so I don't know if these tickets are selling or not, but they're saying it's sold out. So let's run with that. Stepping into the next thing, which is another tour that is currently going on right now, Katy Perry's world tour. Obviously, you've probably seen that this tour has been getting a little bit of backlash. Some of the videos that went viral online copped plenty of hate. She's responded to that now. She's talked about it in an Instagram comment. She's made us aware that she has seen it, but she's not going to buy into the hate of it all. She responded to a comment saying, "When the online world tries to make me a human piñata, I take it with grace and send them love. Because I know many people are hurting in so many ways, and the internet is very much so a dumping ground for unhinged and unhealed. What's real is seeing your faces every night. She's not wrong in terms of the internet being a dumping ground. And I do feel like at this point, the hate is just being piled on and on and on. I've seen the videos of the tour. I don't really think there's anything wrong with them. So I'm happy that she responded to it. I don't think there's going to be much more of that kind of press coming out of the tour, but we will wait and see. Let me know if you've seen the videos and what you think of it. I'm interested to know too, are you going to the Katy Perry Lifetimes tour? We can talk about that in the Discord, or you can drop it in the comments here. Moving on to Mariah Carey and Ariana Grande, who are set to team up once again for a duet on the new Barbra Streisand album, which is called Secret of Life. I probably, to be honest, would not be listening to this record if it wasn't for this matchup. Mariah Carey and Ariana Grande have teamed up on a couple of occasions now. We heard them together on Santa Tell Me off Mariah Carey's Christmas record. And then we also got, of course, Mariah Carey on the Yes And remix last year, which plenty of people had an issue with. Me, actually not so much. But anyway, it's always nice to hear their voices together. I feel like Ariana Grande is a student of the Mariah Carey school of singing, so happy to take it in whatever capacity. Kacey Musgraves is actually going full circle, and she is returning to the newly launched Lost Highway Records. Now, this is a country record label that signed her way back in the day. Basically, this label kind of ceased to exist, but they're bringing it back, I guess, now that country music is having this huge moment, and Interscope is behind the revival for the record. Kacey Musgraves is now signed to Lost Highway once again, and to celebrate it, she's released a cover of Hank Williams' 1949 country classic, Lost Highway. Take a listen.
I'm a rolling stone, all alone and lost, for a life of sin, I've paid the cost.
Let's head over to the charts, where it's good news for my girl Ravyn Lenae, who is up 7 to number 32 on global Spotify with 2.3 million streams.
And oh, it's hard to say, but I wish you were right here. Oh, it's hard to leave you when I get you everywhere.
This is another peak for her. This record just continues to do great things. It's almost in the top 50 of the Billboard Hot 100. It's a top 10 record in the UK. It is from last year's Bird's Eye album, which was one of my favorite albums of 2024, and I highly recommend that you check it out. Next up is an artist called Jessie Murph, who I actually haven't talked about on this podcast yet at all. She is a budding country superstar who has been coming through the ranks and has finally struck gold with her new song Blue Strips, which is now up to number 10 on US Spotify, up 3 places.
Boy, mad at you. I had to get back at you. I had to get back at you. Yeah.
She performs this one at Coachella, and it just keeps going from strength to strength. And given how much pull country music is having in the US right now, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw this one keep going higher. Another new artist to round out the charts roundup today, and that is Sombr, who takes Back to Friends now into the top 5 of the US Spotify charts. This record has just absolutely exploded and keeps going bigger and bigger. A potential number 1 record in the future, maybe. It's also up to number 11 on global, doing very well all around the world. So it's good news for new artists. I think if you watch my TikTok, you probably saw that I was talking about how 2025 has really struggled to break a big pop hit, but maybe this is a year for gathering the new artists and building them up. And if that's the case, I'm okay with that. Let's go into my chat with Bonnie McKee, and I don't have to give much of an introduction to this songwriter and artist in her own right. She basically defined that kind of like 2007, 2008 recession pop sound with the writing that she did for Katy Perry, and then went on to write for Britney Spears and Kesha as well. Around that time, she was also a budding artist in her own right, with the song American Girl doing well on the charts, and it was part of this album called Hot City, which basically got shelved by the record label. But last year, 2024, she ended up releasing it finally for fans, and we talk about that as well. There is so much covered in this conversation. Here we go. I guess the first thing to ask is, like, Where does this begin for you in terms of your songwriting journey? What's the first song you write on that you're like, oh wow, I think I have a career here?
Well, I started out as an artist and I signed a record deal when I was 16 and I made a whole album of songs that I wrote myself. I wrote them 100% myself. I had never co-written before. I
Yeah.
didn't even know what that was. And then I started writing for other people after I got dropped because, that's a rite of passage. Everyone gets this record deal and falls on their face, and it's very important.
Yeah.
And I started getting some little cuts here and there. I got my very first cut ever was an Elliot Yamin B-side, and I was like so excited.
Oh wow, yeah.
And my parents were like, "What do you do? I don't understand." Um, and I think I worked with Kelly Clarkson. I did some songs with Kelly Clarkson on the
Yeah.
Stronger album. And I was like, wow, like this is like a household name. This is someone that I grew up watching. And so I was like, maybe I could do this professionally. Maybe this is real. And
I
then the
mean,
first
Kelly
time
Clarkson feels very real.
and then I worked on the Katy Perry album, and the first song that I wrote with her was Part of Me.
This is the part of me that you're never gonna ever take away from me. No.
And that was like at the very beginning of the process, and so everyone thought that was going to be the single. And I was like, wow, I got one Katy Perry cut. I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah.
No idea where it was all gonna lead to.
But at this point, you're starting to work with, are you working with Max on the Kelly album, or does Max come into play on the Katy one?
No, I hadn't worked with Max yet. Max, I first worked with Katy.
What are you feeling about it at this stage, though? Like back then, because obviously you've been your own artist project, writing music for yourself, and now you're kind of having to give away music in a sense. Does it feel like that to you, or does it feel like you're working on something grander?
I mean, when I first started writing songs for other people, it definitely was like a plan B. Like I never
Yeah.
planned, I didn't want to be a professional songwriter. I wanted to be an artist. And so it was definitely hard at first. And then once I was getting into these real rooms and working with real household names, I was like, this is kind of cool. Like I get to be a part of pop culture history. And
Yeah.
it was kind of like having a superpower, where it's like I would hear my songs out on the radio and be like, nobody knows that I wrote this. And it's like my
Yeah.
secret identity. And there was also something really powerful as a woman growing up in the industry, essentially, that was always, I was always kind of told to just show up and look cute and sing and like write your
Mm.
little song or whatever. And so the fact that I gained my success through my intellectual property was like, I think a really powerful thing for me personally.
Yeah,
That,
incredible.
yeah, that I was able to like make a name for myself with my brain, and
And
nobody
like,
knows who
I
I
f-
am.
yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, in a sense, yes, but we'll get to this. But in terms of when people talk about songwriters and when people comment on my stuff and I hear the people they're talking about, your name comes up so often. And I guess it's helpful that you did have a successful song afterwards, and a lot of people love this record you put out last year.
Oh,
But
thank you.
your name becomes so synonymous with the teenage dream era to the point where people do actually know who you are as a songwriter, which must feel like kind of a win to you at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm very vocal, and I also, I was seeking it out, and I also like as far as just being a public figure, like that was what I wanted. I wanted to be recognized as an artist, and so I kind of my whole plan for writing these songs for other people was like, okay, I'm just gonna like keep my head down, be in the trenches, hone my craft, learn everything that I can,
Yeah.
make some money so I can survive, and eventually end up being an artist again. That was always the plan, and I could use this as like a stepping stone to get back to being an artist. But then it kind of went way crazier than I ever thought it was going to. And it was just like Britney Spears, Kesha, Katy Perry, Cher. Like it was just one thing after another. And I was just like, oh my God, like I have become a professional songwriter accidentally. Oops.
I mean, yeah, I guess when you're in a room with Matt Smart, that stops feeling like a stepping stone.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me about being in the room with Max for the first time. Obviously, like, has such a reputation as a pop kind of genius. How does it feel to be face to face?
I mean, I was very starstruck and I was very nervous. I was also like, I was hopeful that I was good enough and worthy of being in his presence. And so I remember like showing him a little demo that I had done without him. And I was like, what do you think? Because I was like, this is good. Like, I'm getting better. Like, he's going to like this. And he was like, why is the melody completely different on the first and second verses? And I was like, what? What do you mean? It's not. The notes are the same. But I had added syllables. And I
Yeah.
was like, wait, what? How is that a different? Like, I learned so much about like his idea of a melody. It's not just the notes; it's the
Yeah.
syllables, timing. And I was like, whoa, that was like a big revelation for me. And also, I remember writing a melody for him and bringing it in, and he was like, "This is wrong," and I was like, "Wrong? Like this is art." Okay, there is
Yeah.
no right and wrong in art. Like, how dare you? Like, I went to the
He's the
bathroom and like
mathematical producer.
yeah, I like went to the bathroom and cried and was like, "How dare you?" And then I came back and I fixed it the way that he told me to, and I was like, "He was right. Like there is a right and wrong when it comes to pop formulas. When it
Yeah.
comes to writing for the masses, writing for the radio, there are certain rules that you abide by that work for the human brain, that feel satisfying, that make sense." And that doesn't mean that, I mean, it's formulaic in a way, but it's really just tools that you can use in any genre that
Yeah.
will make it easier for the listener to follow along and to be able to sing along with it by the time you hear the second chorus. So it was just a masterclass in pop writing, and I think about him every time I write a song. What would Max do?
Yeah, but I feel like it's a difficult balance to get right in terms of being mathematical and knowing the structure and getting it down, but then also being able to inject it with like that's something that you just kind of can't have a formula for. And I
Mhm.
feel like whenever I think about like one of the most perfect pop songs of all time, and I'm gonna ask you this question because I ask everyone this, but I'll ask it to you at the end. But one of my perfect pop songs is Teenage Dream because I feel like it does that so well. It's mathematical and it's perfectly straight down the line in that way, but then it has this nostalgia and this like kind of this dreamer like sort of aesthetic that is captured so well. I wonder if like you ever found that balance hard to strike.
You think I'm pretty without any makeup on. You think I'm funny when I tell the punchline wrong.
No. In fact, I found learning these kind of mathematical Swedish pop formulas made it so much easier for me to tell the stories that I wanted to tell.
Yeah.
And because it like cuts out the option anxiety a little bit, because when you're writing a song, when you're sitting down with a blank page, it's like you could literally say anything in the universe, you know? And it's nice to have these kind of goalposts to build your like a scaffolding to build your song around.
Yeah.
So it doesn't affect lyrics. It doesn't affect the heart and soul of something. It's just kind of like a template to work off of.
Right.
So I mean, just because you're following a formula that makes something satisfying, it's just like, you know, when you bake a cake, it's like you need flour, you need butter, you need sugar, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's just certain elements that you need to bake a cake.
Yeah.
And then you throw in whatever weird ingredients you want to do to make it your own. But following the simple recipe makes it so that you can elevate your original ideas.
Yeah. I mean, Teenage Dream sounds effortless to me. Was
Thank
it
you.
effortless to make?
Absolutely not. I think Teenage Dream was probably it was one of the most difficult songs that I've ever worked on. It was a beautiful process, and I learned so much in that process. But we wrote the whole song front to back, lyrically, completely different songs, like 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
Um, and it just wasn't feeling right. Like the track was right, the melody was right. The melody changed a little bit in there, but for the most part, we were like, there's something magical here. We just have to capture it. We have to have the right lyric.
Yeah.
And working with Benny Blanco and Katy Perry, and um, Katy and I do the lyrics together. And so we would write like a whole last version. Like we did one that was like, try me on, da 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 da. It was like kind of like Dress You Up in My Love, where it was all
Yeah.
like velvet and silk and zippers and fashion. It was like a fashion thing, and it was cute, and it's a great concept, and like it could have been great, but it was missing that sort of um nostalgic magic. Like it needed to be a little less camp.
Yeah.
um because we had the camp stuff covered. Like we are experts at that, and Katie is such a perfect vessel for that, and she's really really good at it. But this one needed to be a little bit more sophisticated. And so we rewrote it. I remember Benny Blanco coming in and being like, this ain't it. Like he would just like we would finish it and he would be like, it's not cool enough, or it's not sexy enough, or it's not whatever. And like just those simple kind of words like keep it sexy or whatever can
Yeah.
do a lot, where you're just like, oh right, yeah, I guess that this is not, it's not hitting the points that we were hoping it would. And then we did one that was like a much younger version where it was like, you make me feel like I'm born again, all brand new, come on Peter Pan. And that was too young, where it was like, okay, we got the young like childhood thing, but like we're looking for adolescence, we're
Yeah.
looking for like wet dream kind of material, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so yeah, so I had a moment where I was just, Max was so over it, he was just like, it's done. Like because we landed on something that was like kind of a watered down version of the final one, where it was like, okay, it's phonetically pleasing, it's like a little sexier, it's like, we're getting the point across, but it wasn't it. But Max
Yeah.
was like, this is fine, we have a million other songs we got to do not spend another day on this. And they went up to Santa Barbara to start cutting everything, and I stayed behind and was just like, I know that there's something better in me. And I just had my 8 Mile moment where I was just like looking at myself in the mirror like, this is it, bitch, you better get
You
this
get
right.
it.
And yeah, I just started thinking about, my first relationships and what that felt like. And when you're an adolescent, you get really nervous around people, and you're like, scared that is your makeup cute? Like, do you smell okay? Like, are you saying the wrong thing? Whatever. And I remember my first romance in high school or whatever, having my first real boyfriend and having that moment of like, you think I'm pretty without any makeup on, and you think I'm funny when I get the punchline wrong, and like someone just like really seeing you and being
Yeah.
vulnerable for the first time in that way, and what a beautiful feeling that is.
Make me feel like I'm living a teenage dream. The way you turn me on.
Oh, it's just like captured so perfectly. And I feel like in many ways, like strikes. I think I saw Benny recently talking about how Part of Me was going to be the first single, as you said. And it's so interesting that it wasn't, and it ended up coming out at the moment it did, because it was so perfect for that moment
Yeah.
for Katy Perry. And I feel like a whole different world builds with like California Girls and Teenage Dream. Do they all come like post that decision that Part of Me is maybe not the first single anymore?
Yeah, I think Part of Me was kind of like the first one that they were like, okay, this is cool, like this is making the album. And then we started working on Teenage Dream. Last Friday Night, it started turning into like a real like party anthem type of album.
Last Friday night, yeah, we danced on tabletops, and we took too many shots. Think we kissed, but I forgot.
Yeah.
And then Teenage Dream was then going to be the first single, but it was like such a gem, and we knew that there was magic there, but it wasn't like a bonk you over the head, obvious, like shove it down your throat kind of thing. It was like a little more nuanced. And
Yeah.
so for her comeback after, for her sophomore album, this was like her coming back after having huge success with One of the Boys. They needed like a more obvious, I think, like global thing that they wanted to aim for. And so California Girls was the last song that we wrote, actually, because it was like, we need like a party banger, like Teenage Dream was a little too like mid-tempo or like a little too introspective. And so we wrote California Girls, and then that was the first single, and then that kind of teed everybody up to be ready for Teenage Dream.
Yeah. It's funny to like talk about these moments now, because I don't know if you've seen on the internet right now, but there's this whole discussion of recession pop and like like recapturing that kind of escapist magic, which is something you did very well last year on Hot City as well.
Thank you.
And I wonder if you were aware of that kind of moment while you're writing Teenage Dream, because it was probably like the first time it was happening, and that's the kind of like nachos that everyone's trying to reheat right now, not to be like chronically online, but I wondered if you knew that like the appetite for pop music at that point was like escapist, euphoric, colorful, like not too weighed down in feeling.
I think that at that time I was not as aware of like the trends in pop music, or how the economy absolutely affects what kind of music we're listening to.
Yeah.
But I was just writing what came natural to me, and I was also just like trying to survive. So,
Yeah.
when I worked on the Teenage Dream album with everyone, I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have hot water. I didn't have a car. I was like dead broke. So I was like, I just gotta write the best shit I can possibly write and hope that something makes it. And I hadn't had anything ever really work before. Like I had been in the studio with some bigger artists. I had gotten some cuts, but I had never had a radio song. And so just having B-sides like wasn't gonna pay the bills really.
Yeah.
So when I heard that California Girls was a single, I was like, that's great. Like I've heard that before. Like let's hope that it works. Like I'll believe it when I see it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it debuted at #1, and I was kind of in shock for a long time where I was like, okay, well, maybe it's just going to be for this week and it's going to drop off. Like, I don't want to get my hopes up. Like, hope is a dangerous drug. I don't want to like hang my hat on this and like think I'm good when like everything could still be falling apart, you know?
Yeah.
So it took me a long time to sort of accept that something was connecting.
But like, how do you even like digest that? Because it's not just California Girls, it's then like Teenage Dream Last Friday Night. Like it's just raw. It just keeps going and going and going and going. Like that must have just been such a sudden and like accelerated period for you after hustling for so long.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely had a lot of imposter syndrome. Because everyone's like, congratulations, oh my God, you're a hit songwriter. And I was like, well, no shit. I'm in the room with the biggest pop star in the world and Max Martin. Like, what do you expect? You know, I, of course. And I still, for years, was just like, yeah, well, I didn't write those alone. I didn't just like come up with that out of thin air, you know, that was a team effort.
Yeah.
And I think like after 10 years or however long it's been, it's like I've seen how they've aged and how they've lasted, and that we really made like an evergreen project. And so that makes me feel like, okay, well, maybe I did have something to do with that.
I can imagine it's super exciting to be in the room with Katy Perry and Kesha and Kelly Clarkson and all these artists, but then Britney Spears feels like a whole other deal because she's got this like lore behind her and this history behind her that suddenly you're stepping into. Like, how did that weight kind of feel when Hold It Against Me came up?
I mean, I had been pitching songs for Britney for years. So
Yeah.
it was always kind of like, well, nothing ever sticks, so like who knows if this is going anywhere. Once again, it's just like, you know, you show up and it's like gambling. You just hope for the best. You just like do your best and hope that the gods will bless you with good luck and the stars will align.
Yeah.
But that was also a really fun team. I was working with Bloodshy and Nicole Morier and obviously Max. It was really fun because, like, I mean, she wasn't there for any of it. I never met her until after the fact. And so we really just kind of got to play and like think of what we thought she would want to hear. And, you know,
Yeah.
Blackout was such an incredible album. And I feel like that was a big inspiration for us to be like, oh, we can get weird. We can be cutting edge. This doesn't have to be cookie cutter. This doesn't, you know, like we can. That's the fun part about writing for Britney Spears is that, you know, she can really do anything. It's kind of like
Yeah.
a blank canvas. And so it was fun. And I was working on that at the same time as I was working on Teenage Dream. So I was like really in my creative mode. And actually, Hold It Against Me was inspired by Katy Perry.
If I said my heart was beating loud, if we could escape the crowd somehow, if I said I want your body now, would you hold it against me?
I was working on the two albums simultaneously at Conway Studios in Hollywood, and I had come in early to work on the Britney stuff, and I was working with Katy later that day, and when Katy came in, she was wearing like a tight little latex dress. And I was like, damn, Katy, if I told you had a nice body, would you hold it against me? And then I was like, I gotta go.
How surreal is it to then hear Britney's vocal on something you've written? Like, I can imagine you've grown up listening to her.
Yeah, so iconic, so amazing. I think I definitely like cried a couple of times. And I also sang a lot of backgrounds on it. And I sang all the demos for it. So I got to try on my Britney Spears voice, and I was singing so much Britney stuff in my Britney voice that I kind of became like Bonnie Spears. Whereas like
Yeah.
I forgot what I actually sang like, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Like vocal fry.
It must be like interesting for you because I've seen the videos that you've done, like going through songs that you've written before, and TikTok like has created this like kind of yearning for nostalgia and to hear those kind of stories that weren't necessarily being told like pre-TikTok enough, I don't think. Has it been like such a nostalgia trip for you to like open the files of songs that you've worked on and hear the vocals that you've done and stuff?
Yeah, it's funny. I started a Substack where I'm doing like kind of deep dives
Yeah.
into all the archives and the notebooks and everything. And there's a bunch of demos that have leaked online that I just like I said, I would go in and write a song and never hear it again sometimes because like the label wouldn't let you leave the studio with it. And so we've done a thing where where my socials guy will play a song and be like, okay, tell us about this song, and I'll listen to it and be like, don't remember writing this. No idea. And then I'd be like, oh yeah, that sounds like something I would say. Because there's always things that I think every songwriter has, like things that they're always trying to get into a song, and it's like, oh yeah, I remember that. I've written that in 15 other songs. Like that definitely, I did
Yeah.
write that after all.
Yeah. I mean, not
But
a bad problem to have. If I wrote a B-side for Jason Derulo, I'd be talking about it for the end of time. So, like, go
yeah,
ahead.
so it definitely is nostalgic walking down memory lane, going through all these old things. And I write in notebooks, like I have physical notebooks that I write in, and so well, here's one now. Well, what do you know?
Oh,
And
wow.
so it's cool writing that way because I can really see the roadmap of how I got from A to B, like what the original idea was, what the like phonetic, just like mumble verse was, and then
Yeah.
how we went through and like found the right words to tell the story. Because when you write in pen and when you write on paper, like I'm not able to delete things. Like when I write on a computer, I have a tendency to get kind of OCD, and I'm like, oh, this is sloppy, and so I'll just delete
Yeah.
this. Like, what did I say? But I always have my record of all of my terrible ideas
It's
in my notebook.
amazing. Wow. Where in this timeline does American Girl come into play?
I'm an American girl, hot-blooded and I'm ready to go.
Teenage Dream had come out, and I think American Girl came out when I was working on the Prism album, when we were writing Roar, and the other songs that we did on the Prism album. So yeah, I mean, again, I was like using my songwriter clout or whatever to get my second record deal. And then everyone would like trust me, where it's like, see, I know what I'm doing, like I'm good at this. Um, and I got my second record deal, and we put out American Girl. And it was funny because I was like competing with myself on the radio. Like American Girl was out the same time that Roar was out. And
Yeah.
and of course, like Roar being number one is amazing, and I was like, yay. But I also was like, I also have a song that I hope, you know. And American Girl served me well. Like it did pretty well. But I was really not happy at the label, and so I had made this whole album while I was signed there at
Yeah.
Epic. Um, it was kind of like we had sort of dominated and saturated the maximalist recession pop era, and it was kind of coming to a close where it's like Roar happened, there's like a couple more years of that. American Girl like had a chance, but I had a whole album of that type of music.
Yeah.
And then like, Lorde came out, and like Drake was blowing up, and like sort of
Mm.
this temperature shifted where people wanted more minimal kind of like bedroom pop, and it was also more urban leaning, and I was like, but I was like, I still believe in this, and like I have my fans that are loyal to me, and I still want to put this out, but the label is not seeing eye to eye, and so I asked to leave. I wasn't even
Yeah.
properly dropped. I was just like, I don't want this anymore. I don't want to be here. I don't like having a whole army of people between me and my fans. So luckily I had a manager at the time that was able to get me out of my deal, and I left and I went independent, and I put out an EP called Bombastic.
Yeah.
And I learned so much putting out my first independent EP. But that album that I made at Epic never saw the light of day, and I was so heartbroken. But I also at the time was like, well, I mean, I guess it's not relevant anymore. Nobody
Yeah.
wants that kind of sparkly pop anymore. And so then fast forward 10 years or whatever, recession pop is back. I get on TikTok, and all of the comments are like, we want Hot City, we want Forever 21, because all of these songs had leaked, all of the demos had leaked. And I was like, guys, like, I don't own the masters, like, I don't think anybody wants to hear them, blah, blah, blah. And then I found a forum that was like 500 pages long of fans talking about the unreleased album. And like they had tattoos of the lyrics, and I was like, oh my God, like there's really a demand for this. Um,
Yeah.
it's just my like, even if it's just 100 people that want to hear it, that are just like my
Yeah.
super, like I also want this to see the light of day, and so I'm going to do this for myself and for my fans and for however few people it is that want to hear it, right? And so I pulled a Taylor Swift. I re-recorded all of the songs on my own.
Yeah.
I re them, and I put it out, and then it ended up debuting at #2 on the iTunes album chart, right behind Taylor Swift.
Wow.
And I was like, holy shit, this actually worked. And I let the fans curate it too, because I was like, all right, well, which are the songs that you want to hear? So
Yeah.
they curated the album, and it's just been a really fun kind of collaborative experience with my fans, where I really feel like I get to connect with them. Everything that I do, I think about them, and I think about what they want to hear, and
Mm.
what excites them, and what they react to on tour and everything. So it's a beautiful thing. I love my bonbons.
Come on, let's go to Hot City. Fire up the boulevard. Hot City. Stealing cars and breaking hearts.
It's like so crazy though it must be to know that there's an appetite for an album that was essentially shelves. Like
Yeah.
you couldn't put out back in the day, and all this time later, there are still fans that are writing for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that really meant a lot to me, because I was like devastated that I had to abandon that album, because I worked so hard on it. It was at the peak of my like songwriting glory. Like I was
Yeah.
really in my top mode, and I just like, to just throw all of that away was devastating. So it was great to be able to, revive it and resurrect it, so to speak. And it's just been a really fulfilling experience to let them have a life.
The universe like has a very weird way of telling you the time's not right. Like it's crazy that it's taken like all this time and now went back at the
Yeah.
like bright pop phase of music, and the fans are like, we'll have it now. We've waited.
Yeah. And it's like it is pop music goes in cycles, like 5-year cycles, I'd say, where it's like it'll be all,
Mm.
sparkly pop, and then everyone gets tired of it. And it was like, in the 80s there was like hair metal, where it was like pop metal music, and then everyone got bored with that, and it was like time for Nirvana. And then Nirvana comes, and then it's all grunge, and then everyone's tired of that, and then Britney Spears and the Backstreet Boys come.
Yeah.
It goes in cycles. And so I think part of me sort of knew that, where I was like, I know that I wrote songs that will stand the test of time. That's what I do. I like to
Yeah.
write evergreen songs that could have come out 40 years ago and could come out 40 years from now, and they still will connect with people. And
Yeah.
so it was nice to know that my instincts were right. And then I was like, see, I knew these were good all along.
You were right. I mean, how do you like go through that period though, when the tempo starts to slow down, the color starts to change? Like, how do you personally navigate that situation when that's not the type of music you want to write, and it's not the type of music you resonate with?
I mean, it was tough for a minute. I mean, I put out the Bombastic EP, which was
Yeah.
kind of more rock leaning, and it was kind of just not like anything else. And
Yeah.
I've never been super big on following trends, honestly. I'm kind of like good at what I'm good at, and I tried in the writing rooms just as a songwriter to do the Drake thing, to do I mean, I can do bedroom pop. I feel like that's just like a stripped back version of what I already did.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it didn't like excite me the way that I like production. I grew up on Madonna and Michael Jackson and Prince and Britney Spears, and like I like production a lot.
Yeah.
Um, so I was just like very bored with it, and I also was just very depressed. Like it was a weird time in my own life. Like I was going through a lot of personal stuff, and I was just like, I would go to the studio and sit down to write and just burst into tears and just be
Yeah.
like, I don't want to be here. Like, I don't want to be here. It's really hard to like be on top for so long. And then suddenly it's like everyone changed their minds. And then
Yeah.
is it over? Like, was that it? Like, do I just lay down and die? Am I never going to write a hit again?
Yeah.
So I
Imagine
definitely,
it's like easy to blame yourself rather than just a changing of guards, which is natural.
yeah, totally. And I definitely had like an existential crisis for a while there where I was just needed to like sort of reassess and think about why I do what I do and who I want to be. And I was sort of fighting to still be a hit songwriter. And I was like, this ain't for me. Like, this is not my
Yeah.
wheelhouse. And I know that. And I tried and it's not connecting. So like, I need to do something else. And
Yeah.
so I started, actually I started screenwriting. I started like looking into other
Wow.
talents that I might have and just exploring what else I could maybe do. Like, what happens if my run is over and I'm never going to write a hit song again? What does that mean? What does that look like? How do I survive? You know?
Yeah.
And so I started exploring other outlets with acting and screenwriting, and I was working on another artist album for myself. And I don't know, I had to really get to the root of like why I do what I do, because there was a minute where I was like, okay, I can't, I'm too old to be a pop star. I have to just abandon that dream. I have outgrown
Yeah.
this dream. I tried, it didn't work. And so I had a few years of just being like, okay, I'm just going to see what else I can do. And then I was just so depressed. I was so depressed. And I realized that like I am an artist whether I like it or not. I don't have a
Yeah.
choice. I've had many moments in my life where I've like prayed for that will to leave me, where I would be like, why
Yeah.
do I have to choose the most difficult competitive hobby in the world?
Yeah.
Uh, and I wish that I didn't want it so bad. But then I realized that like that's what brings me joy. And so if
Yeah.
that's what brings me joy, then I'm gonna do that. And then once I returned to being an artist again, I was like, yeah, this is what it's about. It's not really about being number one. It's about doing something that I love. And if that reaches just a handful of people, then I feel like I'm doing what I was born to do.
And at the same time, pop music in general has moved further and further away from the idea that being number one is the most important thing. There are so many subgenres and fans out there where you can have like you can pack an arena without having a single song on the Billboard Hot 100, which is totally
Absolutely.
different to what it was 10 years ago.
Definitely. And so I think that also brought me newfound hope, because I was like, yeah, it used to be you needed a record label, you needed the radio. And if you didn't have
Yeah.
those things, then you were a joke, you know? And
Yeah.
now it's like really, it's anyone's game. And I love that TikTok and social media has really democratized the artist experience, where it's like if you have
Mm.
something to say, if you have something to express, you can do that. There's no one in between you and your audience. And that's a beautiful thing. It's also like super oversaturated and super competitive still, but at least like if you want to put something out, you can. There's TuneCore, there's DistroKid, there's whatever. You know, you don't need
Yeah.
to do that.
That is it for today. I hope you enjoyed my chat with Bonnie McKee. If there's anything you took away from the interview, I would love to hear it. Drop it in my DMs or let's talk further on the Discord about this episode. I'm excited to hear what you have to say. And also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and rate it 5 stars if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. And I will see you tomorrow for Bop or Flop.